For most of the day, Legislative Reapportionment Committee Chairman Rick Manley and Lister Hill Proctor have been meeting with officials of the Justice Department, going over changes to the reapportionment plan. Those changes address a long list of objections the Justice Department leveled last week against the reapportionment plan passed last fall by the legislature. Today's meeting was an attempt to get an unofficial assessment from the Justice Department to these latest changes. Governor James' legislative liaison, Bob Getty, says the proclamation for the special session was issued after Rick Manley called late this afternoon saying he felt comfortable with the Justice Department's reaction. The Justice Department said in its objections last week that the reapportionment plan digressed in black representation in a number of areas of the state. It's widely assumed that if the Justice Department didn't think these latest changes removed their objections, no special session would have been called until more changes could have been drafted. But with the apparent positive reaction from the Justice Department, these latest changes will be submitted to the legislature next week. The state is still under a close deadline. A suit in federal court on the reapportionment plan gives the legislature until the first week in June to adopt the plan and get official approval from the Justice Department. If that deadline isn't met, the court could consider implementing a reapportionment plan of its own. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News. Word came late this afternoon that Representative Rick Manley and Senator Lister Hill Proctor, members of the Reapportionment Committee, felt comfortable with how the Justice Department reacted to the latest set of changes to the reapportionment plan. The changes were drawn up after the Justice Department issued a series of objections last week to the reapportionment plan the legislature passed last fall. The Justice Department complained the legislature's plan discriminated against blacks by reducing black representation in the legislature. The committee then drafted changes that were presented to the Justice Department officials at the first of the week. Today, word came from the governor's legislative liaison, Bob Getty, that Manley felt comfortable with the Justice Department and that he thought they would accept the changes if the legislature also approved them. The legislature is under some other pressure to accept the changes. A federal court has given the state until the first week in June to accept a plan or face the likelihood the court will implement one of its own. Governor James also included his crime law reform package in this special session, but Getty says the emphasis will be on the reapportionment plan, and if time allows, the crime package will be considered. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
The 1981 state employees' job evaluation results show 30% of the workers are doing an excellent job, 50% are performing above average, 15% satisfactorily, and 10% only marginally. Based on their job performances, workers are entitled to a 10% or up to a 4-step annual raise, thanks to the governor and a legislative oversight committee that approved the plan last month. But the Personnel Board deferred its implementation for 6 to 9 months and decided that during that time to limit any increases to a 1 to 2.5-step pay hike. The delay is to allow the board time to revise job evaluation forms. That decision outraged state workers.
You proceed to presume to have the authority to change anything that the legislative body and the governor had approved. Now, for you to raise the
Alabama State Employee Association Representative Paul Smith told the board to stop Mickey Mousing around, and although the board's action isn't final, it'll probably be reconsidered before any further action is taken.
Those evaluations are invalid for race purposes. I hope you will reconsider.
Just like the personal computers we talked about last night, there are dozens of very good videotape recorders and video disc players on the market today, with prices ranging from about $600 to $1,200, depending on how many features you want on your machine. The VCRs, or video cassette recorders, come in 2 formats, Beta and VHS. Both now come in extended play versions, allowing 6 or more hours of recording time on one tape. The video disc players are just that, players. You can't record on them, only playback pre-recorded discs made for each individual machine. Recording copyrighted material on home VCRs is being challenged in court. The people who spend millions of dollars to produce the movies and specials say that they want to get some sort of compensation when their products are recorded off commercial television or cable. But one group is strongly opposed to that idea.
Are we infringing when we record at home?
Well, the federal court says that you are breaking the law, which means 12 million American consumers are lawbreakers. But the law is impossible to enforce. That is, unless our rights to privacy are grossly violated. No one has been fined. It's not the kind of issue because that's not a criminal penalty where anyone's going to go to jail. But I don't think there is really a viable solution in the marketplace trying to do it through the court system. That's why everyone is looking really to Congress to try to go back and clarify those copyright laws. Sony Corporation, supported by many other defendants, is currently appealing that decision to the Supreme Court. We should hear sometime next month.
In late June, the NCAA is expected to approve Alabama State's move into its Division I AA. The question is, are the Hornets ready for that move? Well, the man to ask is Dr. Tommy Frederick, Hornet Athletic Director.
Dr. Frederick has been working on NCAA status for ASU for the past 2 years, ever since the organization restructured their divisions. After gaining acceptance into the Southwestern Athletic Conference this week, the next step is approval from the NCAA. Dr. Frederick says the Hornets are not only ready, but anxiously awaiting acceptance.
Is Alabama State ready for the NCAA?
Well, we are actually already a member of Division II of the NCAA, and as far as the move up in classification, I think we are, yes. We were in a 2-year holding period, as I put it, a waiting period, and you know, we've completed all of our process in that area. So as far as the NCAA is concerned and what we have to do, you know, in terms of getting ready programmatic, from a programmatic standpoint, yes, we are ready.
The two sports most affected by the move into Division I AA are the money makers, football and basketball. Some changes, particularly in scheduling, must be made by this coming season. Tonight at 10, we'll talk about the changes and their effect on these money makers. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports. The 2-year process of readying Alabama State for NCAA Division I AA is almost complete. All it takes is NCAA approval on June 26th. But with this acceptance will come some changes. Both the football and basketball programs, the big money makers, must now upgrade their schedules, which means taking to the road much more often for big games with big-name opponents. Can the ASU Athletic Department make money with such an arrangement?
That's a good question. And the fact of the matter is, if we don't move up into Division I AA classification, in my opinion, we'll be hurt more financially than we will if we stay where we are. Now, if the legislature would appropriate about $500,000 to us, you know, to stay in Division II, we'll stay in Division II. But when you have to make it at the gate, you've got to make it, and it's up to you.
Hornet basketball coach James Oliver knows his teams must now play tougher schedules and hit the road more often. And he echoes Dr. Frederick's beliefs that competing in the NCAA will have a positive effect on his program.
If you're going to play, and you're going to have to make some sacrifices, you know, until you get facilities where people will come in and play, you know, and this is one of the only things people won't be able to see our team as much. And, you know, it might mean something to do with the one-loss record. You know, it's a little bit tougher. The scheduling is going to be tougher. The competition will be tougher. But we're looking forward to it. And, you know, it's going to be a challenge for us, but we welcome the challenge.
Reporting from Alabama State, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
plenty to eat, lots to see, and lots to do. It's all weekend long here on Lower Commerce Street. The Jubilee Day began at 8 a.m. and will last until midnight with music and singing mixed in for good measure. Randy Rushton with the Chamber of Commerce says the Jubilee is becoming bigger and better each year.
We've added more events, really more children's events. We haven't gone up on the prices because 95% of everything down here is free. So we invite everybody to come down. You can see clowns, you can see a zoo, you can see all kind of bluegrass music, you can see a ski show, you can see a riverboat and a riverboat queen contest. You can see a battle of the bands, you can see a special Jubilee for little children.
Rushton says he expects a total of weekend attendance through tomorrow of at least 25,000. From downtown Montgomery, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
This week we've looked at some of the most dangerous jobs in Alabama and the nation. This doesn't mean that firefighters, construction workers, policemen, agricultural workers, and underground coal miners have the only hazardous jobs. Working with 15,000 volts of electricity is dangerous, but if an accident happens, the potential for death or injury is lower than a similar accident deep in an underground coal mine. Hundreds of underground workers could be killed in one accident. State Labor Commissioner Jerry Ray says industry is constantly working to improve safety because that increases production.
I think that experience, training, cooperation with worker and company both is the key to all safety. It has to be a joint relation, and I think any company will tell you that a safe place to work is the most productive place to work. They just go hand in hand, there's no doubt about it.
Anyone can have an accident at work or at home. Safety experts agree the best way to cut down on accidents is to be familiar with the work you're doing and use a little common sense. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
The Wallace political comeback was off and launched today amid 90-degree heat and thousands of pounds of barbecue, coleslaw, and baked beans. Approximately 3,500 people sweltered under the hot sun while bluegrass music entertained. Everybody here seemed anxious for the fourth announcement that George Wallace wanted to be governor of Alabama.
The people of Alabama,
the familiar Wallace campaign colors, red, white, and blue uniforms for the women, the voter hats, and the dark red on blue banners finished the setting for another chapter in the Wallace political book. Blue-collar workers, the elderly, business types, and a sprinkling of blacks made up the crowd waiting for the Wallace speech. And the man who has dominated Alabama politics for 30 years was in rare form today. Slightly hoarse but strong.
The governor comes your way.
Wallace pulled out his old political guns and fired away.
But I just want people working. I want people to make ends meet. I want people that are not hungry or hot or cold. And that's what you and I want.
High ad valorem taxes will be rolled back if I'm elected, he said. He also talked about his health.
And I can assure you that I would do nothing to put myself in that valley before the time the Lord has for me to be put in that valley, because my doctors say even running for governor will do you good, and I think it will do you good.
Shortly after that, a brief rain shower sent a few people away.
If we are to obtain our share, we are going to face a campaign in which those who want me out, they want to buy it with money. And in fact, you're going to see more money spent in Alabama as a result of my running that's coming from out of state than you've ever seen in your life before.
Wallace is not expected to begin officially campaigning until July, but we were told by a member of his campaign staff earlier today he is expected to make many speeches around the state through the month of June. This is Norman Lumpkin, WSFA TV News at the Wallace campaign rally.
It was the 230th commencement convocation at ASU, and it was a standing room only crowd. The commencement address came from United States Congressman William Clay of Missouri. Clay is a strong advocate of preservation of the nation's historically black colleges and monitors legislation affecting the schools. Clay serves on the House Committee on Education and Labor and the House Committee on Post Office and Civil Service. In his speech to the graduates, Clay told them their degrees are important, but only if they are used. Clay was sharply critical of the Reagan administration for using what he calls divide-and-conquer tactics to manipulate the poor and underprivileged. Clay says society's leaders have divided people along boundaries of age, religion, and race, and he says poverty should not and cannot be equated with race.
Hungry, barefooted white children in the public schools of South Georgia are just as demeaned as they are on the west side of Chicago. Suffering is a human condition which transcends all consideration of race and color.
Clay says the small number of blacks in government is a tragic indictment of racism in the U.S., and he told the graduates not to be fooled into thinking their degree will mean the end of discrimination. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Senators and President Reagan lobbying by phone, Republicans beat back amendment after amendment by Democrats. Democratic Senator Ernest Hollings of South Carolina lobbied much of the day with fellow Democrats for an amendment delaying the third year of the Reagan tax cut. Hollings said it would lower the budget deficit. The White House kept its troops in line.
The announcement came Friday night at a fundraising dinner in Andalusia. The restaurant was packed with friends and supporters who came to hear what Crum Foshee had been wanting to say for several months.
I'm announcing you tonight, I can't stand it any longer, that I'm going to be a candidate for the state senate for the 23rd district.
Foshee, who was convicted of mail fraud in 1976, will be trying to regain his District 25 seat that is now held by Wallace Miller of Enterprise. Crum and his brother Wheeler, prominent red-level farmers, were convicted in 1978 of check kiting and were sentenced to 18 months of the Maxwell Federal Prison, but were released after serving 6-month sentences. Foshee, whose rights were restored by the State Pardons and Parole Board, says winning back his old Senate seat is something he needs to fill whole again. The former senator told those at the gathering that he is concerned with several issues, among them increases in property taxes, high interest rates, and Japanese imports, which he says are putting Alabamians out of work. Foshee's main pledge is to fight tax increases.
And I'm elected. As far as I'm concerned, there will be no taxes. I think we have enough, and I've heard all my life, we can't afford any more taxes. Well, I'm beginning to agree with you 100%. They just keep adding more and more and more taxes onto the people. So I pledge to you tonight that if elected, I will not vote for any tax, nor will I introduce any tax measure.
The response to Foshee's comments from the crowd was overwhelming, which could indicate a tougher-than-expected race for Foshee's opponent, Wallace Miller. Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
The amount of people would like to vote on it.
Going to be running on.
Well, in my particular race, the main issue is who will be the most effective. I feel like in my first term in the Senate, I proved that I can get things done for the people in my district. With a lot of help and support, I was able to get more revenue sharing for my district than any other Senate district in the state. Under President Reagan's present economic policies, beginning next year, all the monies from the federal government will be given to the legislatures to disperse to their constituents. I worked with Senator Jim Allen for 5 years in Washington. My Senate experience, I've been deputy district attorney. I feel like all of this experience can be used to get my fair share of these monies, which must come through the legislature. And if you are effective, the more money you will get for your district. And that's mainly what I see the issue to be in this race.
At first glance, this may look like an open field. In fact, it's a cemetery overrun with weeds. Lincoln Cemetery is at the corner of Lincoln and Harrison Roads in Montgomery, and at the center of attention in the Montgomery City Council. It all started a couple of weeks ago when City Councilman Donald Watkins became concerned over the condition of Lincoln Cemetery, where many graves are surrounded by waist-high grass, and others are all but buried by weeds. When Watkins learned that the city can do very little to make cemetery owners clean up their lots, he decided to do something himself. What has emerged is a proposed ordinance which would put cemetery owners into jail for 30 days if they didn't clean up their lots after being told to do so by the city. And if the first notice doesn't get their attention, Watkins says the ordinance would give the cemetery owners at least 6 months behind bars for the second offense. If the cemetery in question is owned by a business or corporation, Watkins says then the chief executive would serve the time. Watkins says he will place his proposal before the City Council Public Works Committee this Tuesday. Watkins says he hopes the ordinance will be passed by the council and will give cemetery owners in the city personal incentive to clean up. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
That's right. He's a complaint partner and everything like that.
I'm the one.
Oh, is that your daddy? Yeah. Bless his heart. He's worried to death.
Tonight in the 10 o'clock report, TV 12's Tom Foreman looks at one of society's most widely misunderstood and epidemic health problems, herpes. What is this virus all about? What can be done to control the spread of this age-old and incurable disease, which may affect as many as 30 million people in the United States? Tom talks with health authorities to learn how people are coping with discomforts and what hope there is for the future. Don't miss Tom Foreman's informative report on herpes tonight in the 10 o'clock report on TV 12. Tonight in the 10 o'clock report, get an inside look at Gunter Air Force Station. TV 12's Don Phelps takes you through the world's largest correspondence school at Gunter's Extension Force Institute. Then on to the Air Force Data Systems Design Center, which designs, implements, and maintains the standard automated data systems used by the Air Force worldwide. Plus, Don examines what the future holds for Gunter. Don't miss Don Phelps' enlightening look inside Gunter Air Force Station, tonight in the 10 o'clock report on TV 12.
In our state. My plan when I'm your Public Service Commissioner is to first support the revamping of our electrical rate structure to reduce residential and commercial rates. There are substantial staff problems. The current Public Service Commission has been playing a shell game with the people of Alabama by publicly hollering no to all rate hike requests and then turning their backs and winking when the Alabama Supreme Court grants most of the utility's original request. We do need 2 votes out of the 3 to get anything done in the Public Service Commission. Basically, the way I look at it, but probably up in the Tennessee Valley area. It's not operating, though, in the service area of Alabama. Assistant who really has the background. I really don't take any position. That's up to the Alabama legislature to do that. I recognize that we've had serious problems in the election of PSC commissioners over the past few years. That's why I'm running for the office.
Justice Adams was sworn in September 17, 1980. Adams says he's a rare bird, joining only 4 other black state Supreme Court justices in the United States. Adams calls his appointment significant here in the cradle of the Confederacy. When he travels across the country, Adams says he tells people about that historic occasion and the election of some 250 other blacks to public offices in Alabama. But Justice Adams says sometimes his job is a lonely one. He says the decisions handed down don't always please many people. Adams remembers the criticism when he voted for the death penalty, an issue he fought as a civil rights attorney. Adams defended that position.
When we decided our case, I especially put forward the proposition that I believed in the death sentence if it was non-discriminatorily applied.
When he was sworn in, Justice Adams vowed to work for all Alabamians regardless of race. Today, he says if elected to a full term on the High Court, he'll continue that commitment. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Then the Honorable Mr. Sir, who I met in Korea, and accompanying him, our own distinguished Governor, Governor Ford. That is important, that justice have the semblance of justice and the appearance of justice. When we decided our case, I especially put forward the proposition that I believed in the death sentence if it was non-discriminatorily applied. It to me to speak to this distinguished body. I know
Jackson, Mississippi on Monday, and then the following week we'll be in Baton Rouge and I'd like to point out the poster over here signed by the President.
That's right. He's a complaint partner and everything like that.
I'm the one.
Oh, is that your daddy? Yeah. Bless his heart. He's worried to death.
Biggest mistake is giving up, so with Ron is Ted Truck. Ted, would you stand? Next person has been with me for the last 3 years. Students, people, this is what it's all about. Mr. Stegall, I want to tell you that favor about serving them. They are
My plan when I'm your Public Service Commissioner is to first support the revamping of our electrical rates, of course looking to see who else qualifies, but the current Public Service Commissioner has been playing a shell game with the people of Alabama by publicly hollering no to all rate hike requests and then turning their backs and winking when the Alabama Supreme Court grants most of the utilities' original request. You do need 2 votes out of the 3 to get anything done in the Public Service Commission. Basically, the way I look at it is substantial staff problems of the 134 employees.
April 26, 1977, John Lewis Evans is convicted of murdering pawn shop operator Edward Nasser during a robbery. In his trial, Evans demands the death sentence.
I've been at it a long time, and if you don't come back with a death sentence, which is the only other thing I think you can come out with, I'm going to get out and I'm going to do it again.
On April 5, 1979, Evans is scheduled to die in Alabama's electric chair. Hours before the execution is to take place, a U.S. Supreme Court justice delays it for 6 days. Then Evans decides to fight the conviction. March 9, 1981, a federal appeals court orders a new trial for Evans. The state appeals. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court says the federal appeals court was wrong in ordering a new trial for Evans. Assistant Attorney General Ed Carnes, who represents the state in the Evans case, says the decision is a major victory, but there are other questions to be answered.
Evans attorneys have also raised in the Fifth Circuit a plethora of other minor issues, which they can be expected to raise again when the case goes back, but we're not very concerned about those. Unquestionably, this was the most serious issue, and we think that the ruling here will overlap into those other issues.
Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Edwards is the former director of the Alabama Coalition Against Hunger, an organization that speaks in behalf of working and low-income Alabamians. Edwards claims while he was director, the program helped thousands of poor people, increased awareness of what he calls the inequality of Alabama's current tax system, supported the elimination of sales tax on food, as well as increasing property tax rates on large land holdings. He's a political tenderfoot in the race for the PSC. Edwards says he wants to set up a new electric rate structure and a new revolving loan fund for homeowners, rental units, and small businessmen.
This will cut down future electricity consumption and avoid costly new power plant construction. Third, while allowing for industrial growth to bring in the badly needed new jobs to our state, I will work to ensure that the PSC will avoid the overexpansion of recent years that has resulted in our using only 75% of our generating capacity.
Edwards takes his campaign on the road across the state tomorrow. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
They want to get into politics. There's either a series or a sequence of events that kind of agitates you inside and makes you think, oh, you know, maybe I could work out a little bit harder. Is there anything about state government?
Well, you know, I think that just like a lot of other citizens in the district, that we see the legislature here in Montgomery. They come to Montgomery, they have a certain amount of time to do things. They don't get them done. They have to stop the clock a lot and, you know, do things after their time is up. Well, I'd like to maybe see if I can contribute to getting things done on time and just coming to Montgomery and doing what we're supposed to do.
Problems with the reapportionment plan surfaced early when members of the reapportionment committee were told computer problems would delay them getting a copy of the newest plan. That delay, along with allegations that many members could not have input into the plan, sparked a heated debate on the House floor. Almost a third of the House failed in an attempt to delay consideration of the plan for one day to have more time to study the new plan. Black members of the House joined the chorus of discontent, saying they preferred to see a plan that increased the likelihood of more black House and Senate seats. Many of the members will get their first close look at the new plan tomorrow when it's debated in a public hearing before a joint House and Senate Judiciary Committee. While this session is to deal specifically with reapportionment, a bill offering a constitutional amendment to repeal legislative immunity to traffic violations was introduced in both houses. Senator Big Ed Robertson of Tuscaloosa said 95% of his constituents were upset about the recent claim of that immunity from drunk driving charges. And the governor's crime reform package was introduced in both houses, even though officials in the governor's office say the package will only be moved if time permits. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
By the time Fred Hooper came to Montgomery in 1937, he was already a successful contractor. He had gained a reputation for getting big jobs done on time, and it had made him a rich man. He established Hooper Farms on about 5,000 acres in southwest Montgomery. It became a show place for prized Hereford cattle, and to the astonishment of some, a show place for thoroughbred racehorses. Some of the white board fences still stand along Highway 31.
When I started out to breed here, they thought I was crazy if I thought I could raise a racehorse in Alabama.
Yeah.
But I had, you probably don't remember, but I had one of the finest show Hereford herds around in the country, and I believe where you could raise a good cow, you could raise a good horse. So.
No man in the history of thoroughbred racing arrived quite as quickly as did Fred Hooper. There was luck involved for certain, but not all of it was luck. He went to the Keeneland yearling sales in 1943. He was a novice in thoroughbreds, but not in horses. His years on the farm and some match racing down in Florida had taught him what to look for. He picked out a Sir Galahad III colt, which he named after his young son. 2 years later, Hook Jr. was in the field of 13 at the Kentucky Derby.
There they go.
The colt was a relative unknown, but a young jockey named Eddie Arcaro was up, looking for his third Kentucky Derby win. By the time they reached the stretch, it was all over. Hook Jr. had a 6-length victory at the wire. Fred Hooper had won the world's most important race with the first thoroughbred he'd ever owned. He's been trying to win number 2 for the last 37 years, to show you how hard it is. But don't feel sorry for him. Since that fantastic start, he has owned nearly 70 stakes winners, including maybe the classiest filly thoroughbred racing has ever known, a horse named Susan's Girl.
I turned down $1 million for a Journey at Sea this past week, and they called me, well, last week, and they called me again on Wednesday night and said they'll pay more if you'll take it. I said, he's not for sale.
You don't need the money, huh?
Well, the wife, when I gave her a horse last year, and he went $134,000 for her, and so somebody won a stake race the other day, and somebody offered her a good price for him, and she said, I said, why don't you, she told me, said, why don't you sell this one you offered $1 million for? I said, why don't you sell yours? I said, I can't sell that one because you gave it. Very cute.
We look forward to seeing one of those Hooper horses in some of the Triple Crown series.
Well, I tell them we're young, all young. We got a lot of time yet. I'm not just close to 85, so so I expect to be around a while longer, yes.
Fred W. Hooper has owned some great horses. Most of them he bred and raised. The list includes Hook Jr., the Derby champion, Crozier, winner of over $640,000, one of the great handicap horses of all times. Olympia, winner of one of the most famous match races of all time, and a great sire at the Hooper Stables in Ocala, Florida. But his real love is one of the queens of thoroughbred racing with the down-home name of Susan's Girl. Susan's Girl was actually bred by Fred Hooper Jr., who still lives in Montgomery. In one of the great wrong moves in thoroughbred horse racing history, Fred Jr. sold Susan's Girl to his dad. In 1972, as a 3-year-old, while Secretariat was making history in the Triple Crown, Susan's Girl was doing quite nicely too, winning the Eclipse Award as the top 3-year-old filly.
They're turning into the stretch with Susan's Girl on the rail, in front by ahead. Dumpty's Dream on the outside, challenging for the lead, is second, a length and 1/2. Chargerette is third, and on the rail, Starboard Watch and Polissima. It's Susan's Girl in front by a length and 1/2, and Dumpty's Dream. Susan's Girl in front, drawing out. As they come down to the line of finish, Susan's Girl a winner by 2 lengths, with Dumpty's Dream second, 5 lengths.
But she didn't quit there. She went on to handicap racing and became one of the all-time leading money-winning mares, retiring a millionaire. How about your great mare, Susan's Girl? Where is she now?
Well, she's at the farm, and she has a colt by her side now, a suckling that is by No Double, which was the top stallion of the country last year. Cost me $50,000 to breed it.
Oh, my goodness. So you're expecting, huh?
Oh, you have to be in this game, expecting.
running up and down the state up through here saying that we're digging that.
That's right, that's right. That's basically it.
Governor, you've made 7 races for the governorship and been successful twice. Some people would call that a long, hard career. How come...
This is a microscopic view of herpes virus hominis genital infection, or as it is more commonly known, genital herpes. The word herpes comes from a Greek word meaning to creep, and the disease our society is dealing with today, genital herpes, is believed to be the same one that troubled the Greeks nearly 2,000 years ago. There are different kinds of herpes. Herpes virus 1 causes lesions in the skin around the mouth known as cold sores. This is not genital herpes. The virus that causes herpes 1 is closely related to herpes virus 2, which is genital herpes. It is herpes virus 2 that has many people concerned. Genital herpes is transmitted through sexual relations. Information and education specialist with the Venereal Disease Control Division of the State Health Department, Bernice Robertson, says herpes symptoms usually begin to show up 4 to 20 days after the disease is contracted and appear as sores on the genitals, buttocks, thighs, and stomach.
They usually develop clusters of blisters that eventually break open in about 4 or 5 days and become extremely painful. They're pulse-filled blisters. In addition to that, the individual can have flu-like feelings with fever, headache, general loss of appetite.
Some people have the symptoms only once.
Or you may be like some patients we've dealt with where there's a recurrence of the blisters every time you are emotionally upset, every time you're overly tired, every time there's a sudden change in weather or some other conditions of stress occurring.
Whether the symptoms appear once or often, once you get genital herpes, you've got it for life. There is no cure. But that's just one reason for all the concern about the disease. The other is a dramatic increase in the number of cases of genital herpes in the United States. From 1966 to 1979, the number of cases jumped 9-fold. Today, 30 million Americans may be suffering from genital herpes. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Gunter Air Force Station originally started out as the city's municipal airport. During World War II, it was used to train British, French, Chinese, and American pilots. At first glance, Gunter appears to be a quiet, sleepy installation, but first impressions can be deceiving.
Just some of the facilities located at Gunter include the Extension Course Institute, the world's largest correspondence school, the Data Systems Design Center, and the Air Force Senior NCO Academy. Commander of Gunter Air Force Station, Colonel Lester Sellers, says the future is bright for Gunter. There's talk of expanding the Data Systems Design Center, and a project being conducted by the Air Force Automated Systems Project Office will have considerable impact at Gunter.
They currently are working on one of the largest computer fly-offs that has ever been conducted. It will bring on board for the Air Force the new computer hardware that will represent our 4th and 5th generation requirements and capabilities. The projects are being performed here for acceptance testing, and the training is for the entire Air Force is anticipated to be conducted here at Gunter Air Force Station.
Another organization that affects the future not only of Gunter, but the Air Force, is the Senior Non-Commissioned Officers Academy. Commandant of the school, Colonel Ronald Henderson, says the basic mission of the 8-week course is to sharpen selected senior NCOs' leadership and management skills.
That's right. In the past, as you probably know, NCOs were primarily technicians in the Air Force. However, today, with over 2/3 of the Air Force being NCO at airman rank, really we're moving senior NCOs into key management jobs that heretofore were reserved for officers. Therefore, the need for additional training in leadership areas.
The Academy is the only school of its type for senior NCOs in the Armed Forces. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Alabama legislature is back in special session to decide the sticky issue of redrawing House and Senate district lines. Chris Grimshaw is at the Capitol for this live report. And Chris, you say they've already run into problems.
Well, Bob, the Senate has already adjourned for the day. The House is still at work in this first day of a session, a special session designed to redraw the House and Senate district lines. Those problems did crop up early when the Interim Reapportionment Committee could not get copies of the bill for reapportionment because the computer used to handle all of the precinct lines and divisions had some problems. Once that bill made it to the House floor, there was a great deal of discontent that popped up fairly early. A number of members who are upset with the short-term or the last-minute changes to the reapportionment plan, which is designed to overcome some of the objections that were lodged by the Justice Department. A number of those complaints came primarily from black members of the House who are urging that a plan be passed that would increase the likelihood of more black and House Senate members. And there were complaints from members of the legislative delegations in Mobile and Birmingham. That's two areas where the House district lines have been changed quite a bit to reportedly satisfy those Justice Department objections. The divisions among the members over the effort to redraw the lines angered Representative Rick Manley of Demopolis, who has been instrumental in the negotiations with the Justice Department. Manley warned that if there were any delays, it could lead to a federal court implementing a plan of its own, regardless of how the members felt about it. The Senate, meanwhile, was fairly quick to introduce the bill, quit and go home, and prepare for the 1 o'clock public hearing tomorrow in the Judiciary Committee for the reapportionment plan. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News, reporting live at the Capitol.
Thanks, Chris. We'll have an update tonight at 10. In the meanwhile, a Greenville City Councilman today.
And planning projects to stimulate coordinated action. That is basically what arts exploration is. Fact-finding and planning projects, coordinated action. I want you to...
The surveys also touch on education and how important we feel the arts are to education to the children. There are also awarenesses to see how the people in Montgomery are aware of the arts and what the arts can do for Montgomery. The arts, are a real broad term, yes, but the arts also have a connotation that businesses want when they come to town. The Chamber of Commerce can well give you the information that we, in the middle of a recession, are still bringing industry to Montgomery and have an expansion of industries. These industries want the arts. When they have executives moving from New York, Boston, San Francisco, etc., these people have been very used to the arts, and they want to come to a community that is very willing to foster the arts.
At this time, we will, if we don't lose them, as you can see, we're still working on it. And past president of the Kiwanis Club. Judge Sankey? No, you're not? How many more we got? My immediate family, my sister Elizabeth. Thank you. Unavailable is Judge Hooper here, Montgomery, and which he judge and was elected. And Judge Hall was a Pulitzer Prize winner and was one of the South's greatest editors. He worked for the
Canadian Armed Forces. Colonel Johannes L. Bandung, Indonesian Air Force. Lieutenant Colonel Amnon Gordillon, Israeli Air Force. Lieutenant Colonel Hessi Arpad, Israeli Air Force.
The Environmental Management Act, passed by the legislature in April, requires the new commission to continue administering and enforcing state and federal environmental laws. About 200 employees will transfer to the new department. Officials say no workers will lose their job. Officials say the move is necessary to eliminate duplication when enforcing and licensing environmental regulations. The governor, lieutenant governor, and Speaker of the House will appoint a 7-member commission to oversee the new department. The agencies being consolidated are the State Air Pollution Control Commission, the State Water Improvement Commission, the Water Wells Standards Board, 2 programs administered by the State Health Department, the Solid and Hazardous Waste and Public Water Supplies programs, the Water and Wastewater Systems personnel, the Environmental Health Administration Laboratory, and the Coastal Area Board. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
See, I got to go, you search of the literature and basic skills, basic competencies, as well as the midfield, the staff of Midfield City school system, and of the tutors as well as the students being tutored and what we think.
place on the agenda.
I hope you take that extra 10%.
This used to be a road up until a few days ago when the owner of this graded property bulldozed it away. 11 families who live here in Madison Park now have no way of driving to their homes. They have to park and then walk. Needless to say, they are upset. Corrine Russell has been living here for 28 years.
I just think it's a disgrace. I got to get out here some way. I said, but he told me if I didn't sell him this lane, that I wouldn't have a road to get out. I told him, I said, it's a road to heaven, and it's a road to hell. I got to get out here some way.
County Commissioner John Knight says he contacted the man who owns the adjacent property, Montgomery civil engineer Frank Garrett Jr. Knight says Garrett told him it's his property, and he can do what he wants to with it. Knight says he intends to take action on the matter.
I have already contacted some attorneys and asked them to look into it. I've also had some discussions with the district attorney's office because I think that some of the things that have taken place out here, there may be some possibilities of some criminal activities.
In the meantime, we were unable to contact Garrett by phone for comment concerning the situation. From Madison Park, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
Injured. However, any assault by 5-on-1 of a school student in those age brackets we take very seriously.
Okay, do you think this is a serious problem in Montgomery right now?
It's not out of control. We closely monitor the gangs. We document their activities. We have internal memoranda here at the police department. We know who the members are. The family court works very close with us in monitoring the gang activities, and when we have a gang-related incident such as this, they work hand in hand with us to ensure that maximum disciplinary action is taken against the people involved.
It's got to be done in order for that group to meet and to elect a. Of course, that's going to take a little doing because Cameron's going to have to go this too.
It's considered a big like
Control Act and the Federal Clean Air Act. And where is this?
I knew the source as much as it came. It came from the commission members themselves. Is there discussion on this?
I sponsored 5 major bills for Montgomery County, including the expansion of the city limits and other things that have inured to the benefit of Montgomery County citizens. And of course, I was born here in Montgomery County. I've lived in this area all my life, so I anticipate that I can work with all counties involved, including the city of Montgomery, when it's called upon to do so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Chris.
Appreciate it. If I get
In the first inning, it looked as though the Braves would get the big jump on Mets ace Pat Zachary. Brett Butler led off the inning with this infield hit to second. But he was soon erased as New York catcher John Stearns makes a fine throw to catch him stealing. That was important because Glenn Hubbard followed with his 3rd home run of the year over the wall in left. And instead of being a 2-0 game, it was only 1-0 Braves. The Mets then struck for 2 in the 3rd off rookie Joe Cali. Ellis Valentine hitting his first home run of the season with George Foster on. and the Mets had the lead 2-1. New York then gets 3 more in the 6th. No outs and runners on the corners. Dave Kingman rips this RBI single. Mookie Wilson will come in to score from third. 1 out later, Hubie Brooks drove in Stearns to make it 4-1, and Ron Gardenhire completed the inning with a double down the line in right, scoring Kingman. That made it 5-1 Mets. But in the 8th, the Braves get 2 back. Hubbard driving in Butler after a leadoff double made it 5-2. After 2 straight singles, Mets bullpen ace Neil Allen then came on and got Dale Murphy to ground into a double play. Hubbard will score, but the Braves' threat is ended. The final, New York 5, Atlanta 3. The Braves will try to break a 3-game losing skid tonight against those same Mets in Atlanta. Reporting from Atlanta, Rick Carnes, WSFA TV Sports.
Several dozen people spoke in opposition to the reapportionment plan, most of them from the rural West Alabama area where blacks say more minority House seats could have been created.
You have gerrymandered, you have watered down, you have done everything within your power to make sure that the black people who live in the western black belt would not have an opportunity to elect representatives that have something in common with the majority of the people of the area.
But proponents of the plan say the latest changes meet the objections listed by the Justice Department and claim that altering the plan now might only jeopardize Justice Department approval of any plan, an allegation black House members don't agree with.
It's just barking up a hollow log. I know how committees work. I know how they are charged. I know what agreements are made prior to committee meetings. So the only yielding that the leadership is going to do so far as it relates to this matter is put them in a position where there is no alternative but to do what's right.
Blacks say that alternative would be federal court-implemented districts based on a plan by Senator Michael Figures. His plan, which was defeated last fall, would create an estimated 20 black House seats and several additional black Senate seats. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
A special report compiled by the State Building and Trades Council gives specific examples of contractors hiring out-of-state personnel. In Prattville, contractor Brown & Root built a paper mill completed in 1980. According to the report, out of 3,000 employees, 50% were hired from out of state when there was a 70% unemployment rate locally for people in construction trades. Another example of work done by Brown & Root is at the Union Camp Paper Mill in Prattville. Brown & Root constructed one section there, and council members say officials at the mill are suing Brown & Root for a 9-month delay and cost overruns. Council members say those problems stem from unskilled labor brought in from out of state. The Trade Council claims that not only are these transient laborers taking jobs away from local skilled workmen, but members claim they have documentation to prove that in every instance, in every city where these people are employed, the crime rate increases. Council members say it's time the public knows about these problems. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
To deny this applicant a license because the Family Mart sells groceries is not fair, not equitable, and it's not constitutional. That was the argument of Family Mart representatives. And the argument of their opponents? If you grant this license, soon every grocery store in town will have a package store. About 50 people showed up to protest plans for the Family Mart package store, many of the same people who showed up late last year when the Family Mart sought a license for a liquor store. And not only was the setting familiar, so were the arguments. Family Mart spokesman said the package store would operate professionally, and even though it would be under the same roof as the main Family Mart store, it would have a separate entrance. Family Mart representatives presented the results of a poll of Family Mart shoppers, which showed a vote in favor of the package store. Opponents, headed by area church leaders, said the poll was unscientific and proved nothing, that if the application was approved, a precedent would be set to allow every grocery store in town to have a package store. But what was new was council talk about an unofficial policy against package stores and grocery stores. One councilman said the council can't vote by sympathy all the time, while another suggested if the council is going to have a policy, it's time the council makes it official. When the vote came, it was 3-4 and 6 against. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
Now the 2-2 pitch, fly ball, deep hit to right center field. Let's see if it's got enough. Valentine is back. It is out of here. There's the 1-0. And there's a fly ball, well hit center field. Mookie Wilson back on the warning track. This one is out of here. A 3-run homer by Glenn Hubbard, his 4th home run of the year. He's now driven in 17. Scoring ahead of him, Rick Mailer and Claudell Washington. The Braves have their biggest inning of the year. 7 runs have scored here in the second.
Him the other way.
Yeah.
And talking with the people out here, this road has been here for a number of years. I've checked the maps down at the county, and this road has been here, and the people used it as a